If Tony Stark had one major arch-villain, it would just have to be the Mandarin. But despite that, we have yet to get a definitive look at the character in the MCU. Or maybe we have. But if not, then how should we see the character portrayed when and if he ever does grace the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Well, that's the subject of this episode. Because today, Dave knows the Mandarin in the MCU. First, let's just clarify this. What does the name Mandarin really mean? Well, the term is actually derived from an old Portuguese word originally used to describe imperial Chinese bureaucrats. In fact, there was a Portuguese novella published in 1880 called The Mandarin. The story was about a character named Teodoro, a poor civil servant living in Lisbon who gets the opportunity to become extremely wealthy, and all he would have to do is ring a bell. However, by ringing this bell, it would actually kill a wealthy Mandarin living all the way in China, far away from Teodoro. So he decides to do it, and he ends up inheriting all of the Mandarin's fortune. But more money, more problems, and he ends up feeling guilty and remorseful for what he's done. He tries to seek out the Mandarin's family to make amends, but to no avail. He ends up deciding to give the money away, and he draws the conclusion that the only bread that tastes good is the bread we earn day by day with our own hands. Never kill the Mandarin. But okay, so while that book is all well and good, what about Marvel Comics? Well, when it comes to the Mandarin, his origins have been shrouded in mystery throughout much of the character's career, changing often or just staying ambiguous. However, now it appears that he is a descendant of Genghis Khan himself, and his father was a wealthy imperial Chinese bureaucrat, or a Mandarin, and his mother was an English noblewoman. However, since Imperial China ended over 100 years ago, this would make the character extremely old in the MCU, and furthermore, since much of Iron Man's original Rogues Gallery consisted of characters that were just allegories for communism, racist allegories at that, it's safe to say that the character would need some updating for the big screen to say the least. And with that being said, let's take a look at the MCU, as there are several candidates who serve as potential Mandarins. First, let's look at Guy Pearce's character, Aldrich Killian. A minor character from the comic books, he actually declares himself to be the true Mandarin at the end of the film Iron Man 3, but no one really cares about that, so let's just move on. Now, aside from Aldrich Killian, let's remember that audience members went into this movie believing that the character was going to get an update for the modern era, but wasn't going to be done any less racist, as it seemed that Ben Kingsley was going to be playing the Mandarin, but this time he would be portrayed as a terrorist leader. This of course ended up being false, as Kingsley was revealed to really be playing a character named Trevor Slattery, an actor who was just pretending to be the Mandarin instead. Following the events of this film, there was a Marvel one-shot episode called All Hail the King that states that the real Mandarin is still out there somewhere and is going to be exacting his revenge on Slattery for using his name. And it was also said that this true Mandarin is the real leader of the Ten Rings terrorist organization that kidnapped Tony Stark in the original Iron Man film. And that brings me to the character of Raza. Now, he was eventually introduced into the comics, but he was first created for the first Iron Man movie. He serves as the leader of the Ten Rings, but he is never officially stated to be the Mandarin, although he has been interpreted to be the MCU's version of the character. Which begs the question, is the true Mandarin who's still out there in the MCU the character of Raza who has survived since the original movie? Or is he a completely different leader who ranks even higher than Raza and has been leading the Ten Rings this whole time? But speaking of the Ten Rings, should this be all there is to them in the MCU? After all, in the comics, the Mandarin does control 10 actual physical rings. Should they be brought into the Marvel Cinematic Universe? And if so, how? Well, here are two possible interpretations that I would like to submit for consideration. First, let's recall the real origins of the Ten Rings in the comic books. In the source material, the Mandarin discovered alien technology from a spaceship that belonged to Axon Kar, a member of the dragon-like Makluan alien race. Over time, the Mandarin mastered the alien technology and used the Ten Rings that he found in the spaceship in order to conquer all those who opposed him. Now, this origin is very campy, and again could benefit from a 21st century makeover, and so it's understandable that they didn't want to use this for the original Iron Man film. Although, enter the Avengers. With the first Avengers film, aliens were brought into the mix. The Mandarin's origin could have easily been adapted to fit in with Chitauri tech instead. However, that sounds a lot like the Vulture's origin in Spider-Man Homecoming, so I guess that one's out the window. Which is too bad, because they didn't have to use that origin for the Vulture, as he could have gotten his wings from the same technology that Falcon uses, which was created by Tony Stark, but I guess they just didn't think of that. Well, anyway, no matter, because here is another completely different interpretation. Let's take an overview of the Iron Man series, the first two films to be exact. In the first film, Tony makes the arc reactor. The bad guy wants to remake it, but can't because he's not as good. Then in the second movie, the new bad guy can remake the arc reactor, equaling that of Tony. Well, the way I see it, the only logical next step is to have a new bad guy that's actually able to surpass Tony. Just imagine this. What if the 10 rings were actually 10 separate arc reactors, even smaller and better than anything that Tony could actually make? What an interesting movie that would be. Either way, with all these possible interpretations, it's clear that the character has a value and could be a great addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that it would be a real shame to leave him out of the equation. In other words, don't kill the Mandarin. But what do you think? How would you like to see the Mandarin in the MCU? Let me know down in the comments which of these options is your favorite, or if you have one yourself. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe right here to Dave Knows Comics. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, Dave knows.